Shangri La Frontier Season 2 came out recently, and while it took me some time to finish the anime, I think it delivered some of the best hype moments and most epic fight scenes we got out of the 2025 anime season. Needless to say, I really enjoyed this anime from start to finish, and we're currently sitting at 4 out of 4 OPs that go insanely hard. In fact, it was when I was jamming to one of these insanely good OPs that I went into the comments and I saw a question. This is such a good anime. Why does it not get more attention? In my own curiosity, and also because I personally really enjoyed it, I clicked on the replies to see what people were saying. I wanted to see every single comment and read the sort of criticisms that people were leveraging against this show. I'm going to read some of these out to you. Quote unquotes. No stakes is probably why it's not as popular as it could have been. The fact that it has no stakes is unfortunately the reason why I didn't enjoy it. Being in a video game means there aren't any stakes. And so this got me thinking, is low stakes in a story inherently less interesting? Broadly speaking, stakes are defined as what a character stands to gain or lose, particularly in relation to their goals or the central conflict of the narrative. Shangri La Frontier is an anime about playing video games. More specifically, it's about our main character, Sunraku, playing video games. I'll briefly introduce the story for those of you who haven't seen the anime. Sunraku is what the story lovingly refers to as a trash gamer. He just loves finding the worst and jankiest games full of glitches to torture himself in order to finally finish. He seems to get some weird sense of satisfaction and accomplishment out of playing some of the worst games possibly imaginable. The setting is a semi-futuristic society where full dive technology for playing video games is mainstream. Think of the nerve gear from SAO that allows people to dive into video games as if they were actually in them. There is one game that Sunraku eventually catches wind of, and it's the god-tier game Shangri La Frontier. Seeking a fresh experience, he dives into this game, seeking what it has to offer. There, he makes friends, overcomes various challenges, unlocks unique scenarios, and rises to the top of the leaderboards. SLF is about a guy who loves to play video games so much that he would even play the worst ones out there, playing a game that any gamer would give their life to have a shot at experiencing. Now, immediately, if we compare this to the plot of, for example, Sword Art Online, we can immediately see that the stakes in the story are quite inherently different. Episode 1 of Sword Art Online establishes that the characters are now in a deathmatch between themselves and the game that they are trapped in. There is only one way to survive, and nobody is going to make it out unscathed. If I were to ask you, just based on these summaries, which plot would you say is more interesting? I think in isolation, the plot scenario of Sword Art Online immediately establishes tension and makes the anime seem way more interesting than it actually is. I'm waiting for all the Sword Art Online fanboys to flame me in the comments. Now look, I'm not a Sword Art Online hater. In fact, I really enjoyed the Aincrad and Alicization arcs of Sword Art Online. However, I've got a hot take coming, and that's going to make all of you want to kill me. It's not even a gaming anime. I know most of you are now looking at me like, what? V? What are you talking about? It's literally an anime with people trapped in a video game. And when I look at the features and details of Sword Art Online, the actual quote-unquote video game setting only lasts for a total of 12 episodes before all these other shenanigans start happening, and Kirito moves between different scenarios for different reasons. I mean, heck, Alicization is just a straight-up isekai with different clothing. Tell me I'm wrong. To build on this, Sword Art Online doesn't use the video game aspects of its setting to very large degrees. In Gun Gale Online, for example, one of the arcs, the ultimate plotline is that there's a guy going around shooting people in the game and then they die in real life. However, turns out the guy was just murdering them in real life. Even the first arc of SAO doesn't necessarily explore the video game elements very heavily. It's all incredibly basic, and the storyline focuses way more on the characters than actually establishing a realistic video game world that people would actually want to play in. In fact, looking at the balancing and just some of the mechanics in Sword Art Online, it just seems like a terrible game, and nobody could convince me to spend over 5 minutes playing it. There's a reason all of the Sword Art Online video game spin-offs have not done that well, and most people don't even know about them. I'll be honest with you guys, Sword Art Online is not an anime about gaming. The most gratification I'm willing to give it is that it's a death game in a video game setting, but that's about it. Other gaming anime, for example, Log Horizon, are pretty much the same. Yes, it does delve into video game mechanics a bit more, but none of it is really realistic, and at some point the line between video game and isekai just blurs more and more. This is not me even saying that either of these anime are particularly bad. That is pretty debatable, and I'm sure that would be a topic for a whole other video. But it's really just me saying that these anime really aren't about gaming as a whole. They're mainly about survival and other themes. And now, this is where I know many people are going to argue that it's those other themes that make those anime interesting. Without them, they would not be very good. I mean, heck, I know pretty much everyone will agree with me when I say that Sword Art Online heavily falls off after the first 12 episodes. And if you don't agree with me, your opinion is wrong, and you're also probably 12. Cry about it in the comments, because anyone who actually enjoyed the damsel in distress role-playing Fairy Queen arc has terrible taste. If a plot needs high stakes, like death, to keep it interesting, was it even that good in the first place? We need to revisit the definition of stakes mentioned earlier in this video. Stakes are defined as what a character stands to gain or lose, particularly regarding their goals or the central conflict of the narrative. How many anime have you seen, particularly action anime, where the stakes are so goddamn high that they are practically incomprehensible to the human brain? Yes, I am looking at you, Dragon Ball Z, but seriously, how many times have we heard that the world is at stake? I mean, sure, that worked on me when I was a kid, but now as an adult and after practically every single show uses this as its final climactic conflict, I care less and less about grand stakes in the stories I consume. What I have started to care about is when stakes are actually personal and I actually give a shit about them. The other thing is that the viewer is always required to suspend their disbelief in so many action anime. What is the natural consequence of a fight to the death? Death! But it's an action anime, it's a shonen, the main character we all know is never gonna die, and when a character does die in an anime, it's practically revolutionary. But this is because we know that the character can't die in a life or death battle, otherwise there would be no story left to follow. And when they have 100 life or death battles throughout the series, the story just starts to lose its appeal. But not every anime that people like, or even every book, play, or show has such high stakes. I want you to think about sports anime like Haikyuu. Heck, what about actual sports in real life? Think about romance anime. What about shows about something like chess? None of these have stakes as grand as the fate of the world, but so many of them have seen so much success. And the reason for this is that calling an anime low stakes just because the consequences are not life or death or world threatening represents a severe misunderstanding of what stakes even mean. Stakes are always going to be defined in relation to the central narrative or the goals of the character. Let me say that again, or the goals of the character. Just because the consequences are not life-threatening does not mean that they are not significant. You passing an exam has very little impact on your physical health, but it could drastically decide your future. Do we not care when we stand in fear waiting for our grades to come out after our finals? Do we not spend days and nights preparing, especially if it's a subject or field that we care about? People study for 8 years for their medical exams. In isolation, any one of those exams might not be terribly important, but if you apply context, that could be the most important exam that person has ever done in the past 8 years. In fact, it could be the most important thing that person has done in the past 8 years, and the consequences could decide the next 10, 20, or even 30 years of their life. To bring this whole thing back around to the original question, can low stakes be interesting in an anime? Absolutely. It's not the severity of the consequences, but rather the impact these consequences have on our characters that make them interesting. Personally, and I'm a big advocate of this, rather than evaluating our stories based on what the story says or how it says it, we need to think about who the characters are, how well they are written, and how much we personally care about them as individuals. If you really want to know why you like a story, it's probably because you really liked the characters. And that doesn't mean to say that they were good or evil, that just means you like the way that they were written and presented. We need to focus our critiques on stories based on how contextually relevant these stakes are to the narrative, instead of just how big of an impact or how many people are going to die. Let's stop thinking like simpletons that bigger is better in quotes, and start actively engaging with the characters and narratives that are being presented to us. Overall, I really enjoyed Shangri La Frontier, and if you haven't checked it out, you really should. It is a great anime, and if you are in any way a gamer or just play some video games, I think you would really enjoy this anime. It's a great love letter to gaming as a whole, and animations so far have been peak. If you enjoyed this critique/video essay, I would really appreciate if you left a like on this video. If you want to see more content like this in the future, be sure to hit that subscribe button, as I'm trying harder and harder to make videos now, and I would really appreciate any traction that I can get. What did you think? Did you enjoy Shangri La Frontier, or did you disagree with some of the points I made? Let me know down in the comments. Anyway, this is V, signing off. Cheers.